All right. So here we are again on True Tuesday. Today's May 5th. It's about 3 o'clock. And thank you all for joining in. So let me make sure I can see everyone. Perfect. Okay, like I said, we might be a small group today, and that's okay. I think you all know who I am. I'm Tomoko Kuta, Deputy Museum Director. For the purposes of True Tuesday, you can reach me through education@thinkplaycreate.org. This way we can answer any questions or provide any additional resources. And this True Tuesday is focused on the visual thinking strategies. And last time we just kind of jumped right in. We started talking about pictures, which is great. But with a nice small group, it is kind of fun to pull it apart and think about it and why it works and how it works. So maybe we'll do a little bit of that. I will proceed to the first image. Megan, have we already done this one with you? Are you okay to do it again? Okay, all right.
Definitely.
Okay, so with visual thinking strategies, we're looking at pictures. And you know, what's interesting about right now is we are literally very far away from one another. But visual thinking strategies, VTS, has a way of pulling people together, mostly through the comments and ideas they share that come through from pictures. So this might be a very familiar picture to you. If you know about it, you know, don't hesitate to share. But I always like to start by having people look all around. And then I always throw out my first question, which is, what's going on in this picture? And do let me know if my sound gets funky. So what's going on in this picture?
There are people who are running.
It looks like, it reminds me of Red Rover, but they should be, doesn't quite logically look like Red Rover, but that's the closest I can come.
All right, so Perry, this makes you think of something and you calling it Red Rover, and I don't know what Red Rover is, so maybe explain to us what that is.
It's obviously a children's game, and you line up on two sides and you hold hands, and then on the opposite side, children will dash at your wall and try and crash through. And if your wall holds, and they become absorbed in the wall, and then you keep bouncing people off the wall until there's no one left.
Okay, so you're looking at these kids, they're kind of lined up, they're holding hands, and it's making you think of this childhood game, which sounds like you probably played, but you said it's probably not Red Rover. And what did you see that made you say that?
Oh, it's the holding the hands and the people falling down, and just like the general sense of chaos and havoc, you know, with the boys playing rough boy games, holding each other back, trying to break away.
Right. So are those the things that make you think it is Red Rover, or not Red Rover?
It's not. It doesn't look like Red Rover, but it just reminds me of that kind of a game that we played at that age.
Okay, so you're remembering sort of the physical games that boys would play. Here's somebody who's tumbled over. There's some pulling back, hands kind of, you know, grasping one another. It's making you think of that childhood game. Great.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Great. What more can we say about this picture?
I'm noticing this figure in the middle, with the hat and the blue jacket. Yeah, the one you're pointing at, and the figure looks so graceful to me. It almost looks like a dancer.
Okay, so you're looking at the body movement of this person in particular, and you're saying it's graceful. What did you see that made you use the word graceful?
There's something in the body looks very fluid. Looks like he's leaping, and he's also, I think maybe it has to do also with the figure to the figure's left, that they're in sync, like they're both like all moving the same direction. It almost looks choreographed, even though I think that it might be, like Perry was saying, like a game that isn't choreographed.
Okay, so there's a synchronicity you're seeing with some children. You use some words that are used in dance choreography. There's a gracefulness. There's maybe this person is leaping through the air. Okay. What more can we say about this picture?
To piggyback up what Megan just said, I see a forward movement. Everything, the children are going forward, the flowers and the grass and the trees, and I don't know about the clouds, but everything seems to be moving to one side. There's movement there.
Great. So in addition to these two kids sort of leaping forward, everything seems to be leaping forward. There's a movement. There's a direction. They seem to be going to the left. It looks like even the flowers and the trees. So and all the figures. Okay. What more can we say about this?
I'm noticing someone who might be a little out of sync with everyone else. The figure to the far left who looks like he's fallen or is falling. And then I'm noticing that the two children that are closest to him are still kind of actively trying to run with the group, but they're also watching what's happening there. So I wonder kind of what the group's goal is. And I feel for this little one who, much like me at that age, was often falling and tripping. The story is there, so.
So thinking about, so you used the word little ones. And what did you say that made you say that, Amy?
Oh, yeah, well, since you say that, I'm looking at the different children, and the ones to the far left, to me, something about their faces, which I can't even quite fully see, but they're sort of soft and a little bit more like younger ones. When I say younger, maybe 5 or 6 as opposed to an older child. So the one that Megan had been speaking about with the blue jacket looks to me maybe like the ringleader, like not only in charge of the group, like in ahead of the group, but also just looks a little bit older based on something in the face and maybe the height. I know there's perspective there too, and the one who's fallen, I don't know, there's something about the way that he's falling that's sort of gives me the impression of maybe like my little ones when they fall, kind of like it's unexpected, and he's he's doing his best to like land softly, but he's not as used to it as maybe an older child would be.
Gotcha. Okay, so you're using the words little ones to describe the children that we're seeing in the picture, but you're also noticing that there's actually different ages, and you're noticing that the faces are a little bit different, denoting different ages, maybe more younger here, kind of the softness of the younger children, older child face, and also position in the pack, quite frankly, I think you're saying. You're noticing the way this little child has fallen down, and it's making you think of, being, you use the words a little bit out of sync initially, so there's a group movement, there's this forward movement that's been identified, but maybe some of them are literally falling out of it. And you're looking at these little kids who are watching this one tumble down, maybe a little bit on the clumsy side, maybe a little less finesse than, over here. So it's a clump of boys, but now we're seeing a little bit more detail, maybe a little bit more definition or difference amongst the group. Yeah, okay. What more can we say about the picture?
All of the children, except for maybe, I can't tell about, it looks like the little boy who's fallen is wearing shoes, and it's hard to tell the others, but it seems like maybe there's only one wearing shoes.
All right.
So there's another boy that might be in shoes as well, next to the one who's fallen.
Okay, this one. Okay. Okay. So a little hard to tell, but you've noticed a detail. It's about the footwear and how most of the kids look like they are barefoot, except the one that's fallen, and maybe this child here who's wearing something possibly.
Yeah.
More interesting details. Yeah.
Well, I wonder then too, when I was thinking that they're very graceful, I thought the ones that looked the most graceful were the ones without shoes, and they're the center people, but there's something that is almost like maybe more wild, like more animal-like, that they're not wearing shoes, or, and it looks like maybe the one on the far right, maybe he's wearing shoes too.
Okay. Okay.
Which makes me think differently about the painting too.
So it's as if being barefoot reveals a little bit more grace in movement. Is that what I'm hearing, Megan?
Yeah. Well, and I'm imagining what the grass feels like. It looks like, you know, they're in this sort of grassy area, but they're about to go to some area that's a little bit more meadowy, you know, and how far would they feel comfortable running without shoes on? You know, maybe they do this a lot. Maybe their feet are field ready.
Okay. So there's a lot of things to speculate here. They're about to transition from a grassier area to more of a meadow. And how might that feel underfoot? Maybe these kids are used to it. Maybe they have, you know, pretty thickened soles, you know. And then just back to the movement, you know, it looks like the children on the edges seem to be wearing shoes, and these kids here in the middle are all barefoot. Okay.
Maybe the one who's falling isn't used to wearing shoes, and that's why he's falling.
Okay, so yeah, like you said, this child may not be used to wearing shoes, and so has fallen over in its clumsiness. Yeah.
Or maybe he's just bending down to pick up his hat because everyone else is also wearing a hat, and he isn't.
There's a lot of showings here. You know, all the boys, all the kids seem to be wearing hats. This one isn't, so maybe he hasn't fallen. This child hasn't fallen, but maybe he's just stooping down to pick up what may have fallen off of his head.
Looking for his contact lens.
I think it also, he's saying something about the group psychology here, because they're obviously a group of boys. I mean, on the left is somewhat separated, but you can imagine that he's part of that group. And clearly the three boys on the left are trying to hold back the the three boys on the right are trying to hold back the four boys on the left. So, you know, it's some kind of a game, obviously, but a game in which you've got two different sides, and one is pulling in one direction, another is pulling in the other, and with all that energy and force, it's like, you know, something's bound to go awry because of the energy and the dynamics and the suddenness of their movement. It makes me think of a painting by Degas called The Young Spartans. I don't know if anybody knows that painting or not, but it's similar. It's set in a similar environment on the countryside. The only thing that's missing is that it's a group of boys facing off against a group of girls. And it's very much a kind of a confrontation. You know, there's a divide between the group. The girls are noticeably absent in this. It's all about the boys, you know, the boy psychology and the boy activity and boy energy.
Great. So you're identifying this group as a group of boys, no girls. And while they are sort of together as one group, you're noticing that maybe there is actually two groups, two sides. This group that's kind of pulling back, this group that's kind of pushing forward. Whoops.
Now they took a break.
Now I'm lost in my, uh-oh. Sorry. Okay, here we go. Sorry. And so there's a bit of tension that you're feeling, and also energy. You use the word energy quite a bit, you know, amongst the boys. And I think this might be related to some of the experiences that you had, you know, childhood games where you're kind of holding each other. You can feel the tension, the pushing and the pulling between, the two. And you made a reference to another painting you're familiar with. Time period might be a little bit different, but in that painting, you're remembering boys and girls. So two groups again, but boys and girls, you know, both genders, kind of pushing and pulling against each other.
Yes, The Young Spartans by Degas, if anybody wants to look it up. It would make a good comparison just because of the the gender issue, I think, and the some of the formal qualities.
Great. Anything else about this picture?
So with the gender, I think that we look at it and we automatically assume that they're boys, and I think that because of what I assume the time period is, I look at it and I think there's something, about the house in the background and the way that they're dressed and the hats that seem like something that you wouldn't see now. But if it were now, like, I might actually look at some of them and think, oh, that could be a girl with her hair, if she had long hair, pulled back, or,
Okay. So you're looking at this picture and you're getting a sense of time frame. And you're getting that from the clothing, from the building back here, this house. And you're thinking, because of that, these are probably all boys. But if this were set today, for example, you might think otherwise, because kids dress differently, or kids, there isn't necessarily a boy look and a girl look. You mentioned might be some girl who has her hair tied back. What did you see that made you think about a different time period?
Just particularly the hats, because the hats look like nothing I've seen a child wear during my time, unless it's like at like a Renaissance fair or something. And the fact that many of them are wearing suspenders. You rarely see suspenders unless it's like somebody's in a Clockwork Orange costume. And so those are the things. And also, you don't even see this kind of play as often in this way. Like, you see it maybe on a schoolyard. You don't see like this kind of group play often with this many kids out in the country in this way, from my experience, like what I'm seeing on a daily basis.
Okay. So there was a lot there. So it's the details of the clothing. It's a little unusual to see this kind of dress, these hats in particular, this feather here and this cap. The suspenders, not very popular these days. But then you're also looking, as Perry has been talking about the psychology of boys, this is a group of, looks like boys, and it's not the kind of play you typically see these days. You might, as you suggested, on a school playground, but it's not a very common scene. Yeah. Okay. Anything else about the picture?
I noticed that the door and the window are both open.
Okay. So there's a structure here. The door and the window seem to be open. Anything else about the picture? Well, that's great for what you've shared. Would it be interesting to sort of analyze what we just did?
Yeah.
So visual thinking strategies is actually a pretty simple method, but it is based on a lot of research. So what did we do together?
We just pointed out what we saw.
Okay, you pointed out what you saw. And did it do anything? Did the pointing out of things do anything?
Well, in my case, it pointed out experiences that I had. So it was a kind of mnemonic experience. So as I looked at it and had memories.
Okay.
Others may not have had that.
Yeah. So you're using a very fundamental skill, which is to see. And then in Perry's case, you're connecting it with past experience and kind of drawing those out. Okay. So
usually what happens is, according to something I was reading about the brains, you have this emotions and memories produce visual output. And so, we're connecting visuals with memories and emotions all the time. So for me, it was a kind of it's very nostalgic looking.
Okay. Kind of like going literally back in time into your memory and pulling out images that you can connect with.
Yeah, but obviously it was way before my time. You know, you're thinking this is 19th, early 20th century.
Yeah.
What else did we do together? Why might this be an interesting activity to do with a group of people, group of kids, students?
Depending on what people are sharing, all of a sudden it pulls your focus towards something that maybe you didn't notice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So depending on what kinds of comments, you're suddenly noticing what somebody else is talking about. And why might that be helpful or useful?
I love seeing somebody else's perspective, you know, and it feels like I was actually thinking it felt refreshing and then made me want to take a drink of water because it does, there's a certain like, oh, I didn't think about that, you know, or thinking about it, how Perry, you might see this as like nostalgic, but I'm looking at this and when I think about it that way, it reminds me of watching boys play, but it doesn't remind me of being in that kind of play, you know? Yeah. So it shifts my understanding of the people in the group, you know, but also my understanding of what I'm looking at.
And this may, you know, be a very obvious question, Megan, but why might that be helpful? To listen to somebody else's experience.
Sorry, I couldn't hear anything you were saying. I'm not listening to you. No, to be able to listen to each other, to be really, you know, to take on the fact that we can all look at the same thing. And theoretically, we're all seeing the same thing. There might be some differences in the way that we see it, but and see so many different ways of understanding the same text or the same image.
Right.
It's like a distributed type of activity. So everybody's looking at the image, searching it, noting things that are meaningful, and then feeding back to that. And so it's like you have, you know, 5 search engines working on this image and coming back with
That's interesting.
Data, right?
Yeah.
And we all bring it back and put it on the table, and what we collectively have gathered that contributes to our whole our sense of what it is beyond our experience.
Right. So to sort of summarize, I think where we've landed is we've ended up with a group, not really consensus, but we've had a group discussion about a picture. Each one of us found different details to kind of point out and maybe, you know, kind of popped out at us initially. But we've had this gathering of thoughts. They've been sort of brought together. Most of them align. I don't think there was anything here that, you know, was sort of a counterpoint, but it drew us together. You know, we listened to one another. We had our perspectives changed by different comments that were shared. And so, you know, that in a very simple way is the beauty of VTS. You know, you're using a work of art, so it's external, it's not personal. Like no one is offending me by saying, oh, that child is wearing shoes and that child has no shoes. You know, it's a painting, right? It's not me, it's not about me. And then we can have all these different details come out. Anything else you'd like to say about the process? How it made you feel? There's a lot more to say, but you know.
It didn't make me feel. I mean, it made me feel a little bit. It made me. I'd say it made me think more than feel.
Okay.
I wasn't reaching out with my heart as much as I was my, you know, perceptual skills, maybe, you know.
Right. Now, the other thing that's interesting about VTS is image selection. So for True Tuesdays, I don't know who's going to be chiming in. So I pick pictures that are easy to read. You know, there's a narrative quality to them. There are details, but not too many details to pick out, and something that seems somewhat familiar, but a little bit intriguing, so that we would want to speculate.
Yeah.
If I had to address a whole group of people like you, Perry,
Yeah.
I would probably pick something a little bit different, and then which may lead to more.
I enjoyed this painting, not least of all because it reminds me of a program I've been watching called Anne with an E, which is kind of set in the same period, except it's set in Canada. Of a group of young children going up in a kind of a rural.
Let's do this. You guys game for one more picture?
Yeah, sure.
So I have two lined up. So tell me which one, because it's, you know, I'm thrilled with both.
Tomoko, are you going to tell us any more about the painting, the artist and the title?
Sure. So what happens in VTS is when somebody asks that, I just continue to role play my role, which is facilitator. So Perry, you have a question about who made this painting and what it's all about. Does anyone know the answers to those questions? Where might we find this information?
Google.
Today, you know, the biggest search engine is Google.
Well, I'm trying to see if there's a signature that I can see.
And it's hard to see on this reproduction. But usually when I get those questions, I like to throw it back to the group because I'm a facilitator. I'm not trying to be the all-knowing person. What I would say is, so based on the research that I've been able to do and look at this painting for quite some time, I know that this is a piece called Snap the Whip, and it's by Winslow Homer.
Okay, that's,
so, everything that we were talking about, as I think, is a part of that answer.
Oh, okay, that makes all sense to me now.
Yeah, yeah. And part of the reason for not leading with the information is I don't want to take away from your interest in it. I say, this is what it is. Here's the artist, But anyway, so the next ones, I have this, and I have this. I went very iconic this week.
Mm-hmm.
Does one or the other speak to you guys, or do you want me to?
I like them both.
Diana, do you have a preference?
I don't have a preference. I do like the Norman Rockwell.
Okay,
That one.
Well, why don't we go here?
Mm-hmm.
This is a fun one. Okay, so same as the other one, and let's see what we can put together, because it is always very different each time a group of people gather.
Mm-hmm.
So take a moment to look all around. And then I'll ask, what's going on in this picture?
She's practicing for her Zoom call.
She's practicing for her Zoom call, said Diana. What did you see that made you say that?
Looking at her expression, her reflection, it looks like a little set. She has something in her lap that it's connecting me to what I feel my face looks like behind the scenes.
Right, so it looks like this person's getting ready for a Zoom call by checking her reflection, expression, kind of all around. Seems to be a mirror here, something on her lap, something that we've probably all done to prepare for Zoom in some way or another.
Yeah. I think she unfortunately looks disappointed in what she's seeing. To me, I noticed that her expression to me looks like she's frowning a bit. And then I noticed that she has what looks like a magazine image on her lap of a woman who looks like a woman. And this person here doesn't look like a woman to me yet. She looks like a young girl. Mm-hmm. And so my first impression was that she might be comparing herself here to the image, and maybe her disappointment is that she's not yet as old as she would like to be.
Tomoko,
Yeah.
I couldn't quite hear. I missed the first part. It might be mine.
Okay.
You shorted it out for a second.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Noticing this young girl looking in the mirror with a slightly disappointed look. And you're thinking, Amy, that she's comparing herself to what looks like a woman featured in a magazine, and she's not quite that age, she's not quite that mature, and so therefore she's a little disappointed. Is that right? Yeah.
It's I saw her expression as that she was trying to maybe mimic what the woman in the picture is doing, but you know, when we try to look, it's like you try to look sexy and you're like and you're like, that didn't work, because she's just trying to be like, you know.
Okay,
but now
so
that we say disappointed, it changes it for me. I think I could totally see the kind of like, this is not right.
Again, you started out by saying that the way you were reading the picture was that she wasn't necessarily disappointed, but kind of looking into the mirror, trying to mimic the pose of the woman in the magazine. Okay. But then you also can see where Amy got, the sentiment of disappointment.
I see the elements that really, I think, are meaningful, I think, are the doll on the ground, which is not like sitting up, you know, it's sort of discarded and dumped on the ground. So it suggests that it was hastily discarded. And the way she's touching her cheek, it's almost like she's caressing her face in a way. And the woman in the photograph isn't making that gesture. So that touching of the face suggests, you know, maybe it's like an unconscious attempt to console herself, you know, or I don't know. I wouldn't want to interpret it, but it does suggest a kind of a mixed emotions, whether those are disappointment or curiosity or the mystery of the future, the unknown. I don't know, but she's obviously poised between her, you know, her juvenile stage and her a mature stage, and those attributes scattered on the floor underline that, you know, in kind of a poetic way for Norman Rockwell.
So we've been talking a lot about this young girl, and Perry, you brought in the things that are on the floor near her feet, in particular the doll that looks like it was sort of hastily put down. And I think well, let me ask you, what do you see that made you say that?
That it's hastily put down?
Yeah.
Well, it's because it's not sitting erect on the floor. It's, you know, I imagine little girls setting up their dolls like an audience. They're, you know, you have dolls and you set them up, and they're your audience as you play make believe. And this is just not the case here with this particular doll. I mean, the other thing about it, as a painter, I see it also as a diagonal. The diagonal of her back along her arm is just a kind of a formal element that brings you into the center of the painting. There's a rhyming of arms, right? Forearms here.
Here?
Yeah. And so there's, in some ways, it's just purely kind of a formal thing. If she was sitting up all neat and squared away, it may not have the same kind of, effect on the formal arrangement and the movement of your eye through the painting. As it is, he does that and is able to also give a layer of psychological meaning.
Gotcha. Okay. So the layer of psychological meaning is this doll that's been maybe hastily put down while she focuses her attention intently on her own, you know, face, comparing it to this magazine. The pose is different, you mentioned. So maybe the hands are, you know, her attempt to sort of, did you say console herself?
Yeah. Or, yeah. I mean, she's sort of, you know, I don't know what it means when you touch your face like that. It's like you're trying to ground, you know, it's very tactile. It's a tactile moment where she's almost probably not even conscious that she's doing it. Okay.
Okay. So there's something about that movement, that gesture, that has more meaning that maybe meets the eye initially. You know, there's something, a consoling there. and that these things here are, you know, very important to the understanding of the picture. And you're also seeing the formal compositions that the artist has used, the use of lines to the figure's arms and, you know, things like that. Okay. Anything else that we want to share?
I'm noticing that the picture in her lap is in black and white, but everything around has some color to it. Maybe some of the black backdrop doesn't, and it could be a sign of the time, but also that the focus is not on this black and white picture, but in the color, the splashes of red that are sort of around.
Okay. So you're noticing that the picture of the woman is in black and white. It might be indicative of magazines being printed in black and white in whatever time period this was, you know, composed. But it also might be symbolic, like Perry was talking about the doll being sort of, you know, not quite properly seated as a doll should be, you know, placed by a young girl who cares about it, but that the colors might indicate that this is where the emphasis should be on the girl and not so much here. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great.
I'm wondering, I keep imagining, did she set this whole thing up? I mean, I know it's a formal kind of portrait, and there's probably, but like the mirror looks like it's maybe leaned up against a cane chair, you know, and everything else. So, like, was this just set up, or did this little girl drag this giant mirror off the wall? You know? So desperate to get like a full, like, maybe she doesn't have a dressing table and she's playing to have like at a dressing table or something like that. But
yeah.
Okay, so you're wondering about the scene, you know, how did it come to be? Did she set it up? Did she put this chair here to prop up the mirror? Is the mirror off a wall? Was she so desperate to have a way to sort of look at herself like a dressing table and then sort of prepare herself? Yeah. What more can we say about this?
I wonder what the object, so it looks like there's a brush and a comb that's stuck into it, which is kind of an interesting angle. I mean, it's a nice way to hold a comb, but there's an interesting dividing line there. And then I wonder what the object to the right is, if it's a cup or what that is.
Yeah, looks like there's, so you're noticing a brush, there's a comb stuck into the bristles, something that's kind of rounded on top, so it might be a cup. It's a little hard to tell, but there are these things here on the floor.
I would, to me, they look like all looks like makeup things. Sticks, maybe like a container of blush. I don't know.
So Perry, you think it's makeup? What did you see that made you say it looks like makeup?
Those are things I would expect to find in on a bathroom counter, a woman's bathroom, you know, that are part of the morning ritual, or, as my mother used to say, putting on her face.
So these things look like, you know, what you would assume would be called makeup, things that a woman might use to prepare.
Yeah, and you know, at the risk of sounding like a cadre old sexist man, but it just sort of, you know, that's kind of.
I don't think you can fall into that category, Perry.
Okay. Well, it certainly speaks to today because, you know, just the amount of videos out there by people who are putting on makeup. Tutorial is pretty outrageous. So there's something about it that speaks to our moment, on not only her isolation and during quarantine, but also the kind of, you know, the sort of you're captured by your image in the mirror, mesmerized by your own face.
Okay.
The narcissistic moment.
That a Zoom allows for, right? Going back to that. I finally figured out the feature where you can hide yourself. Thank goodness.
Thank you, Tomoko. That really helped me.
I'm so tired of looking at my face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just to recap what Perry was talking about, you know, there's been discussion about all the different details, and you're thinking about our time right now. This is a different moment, but somehow it relates. The social isolation, the narcissism of, you know, constantly looking at one's face, whether it's in a mirror or through Zoom calls. There's this sort of an interesting connection to what we're living in right now. Well, I just want to say thank you guys. You know, I'm always encouraged and surprised by the comments that I hear and the discussion we end up with. And again, just to go back to BTS, did you feel, here's a funny question, did you feel satisfied by our discussion? And if so, why? What makes you feel satisfied?
I really enjoyed it. I find this whole process very relaxing. And one of the things that I really appreciate about BTS is that all observations are worthwhile, all contributions are valid. And so it's not a pressure-filled moment, I think, hopefully for anyone who's taking part in it. And as we've said before, it's just nice to hear what everybody notices. And it's often different from what I first noticed. And so it gives me a more complete kind of sense of what I'm looking at.
Amy, how did you come up with the understanding that all comments out?
Oh, okay. Well, I don't think it's been mentioned here, but I know it's been mentioned in previous conversations about BTS. But one of the things that you do as the facilitator is that you paraphrase everything that we offer. And I think that provides not only the confirmation that you've heard what we've said, but you're offering it back up to the group again. So that to me really gives validity to every comment that's made.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it's really important that the facilitator, and any of you can actually be facilitator now that we've done this a few times. You know, it's just to make sure that paraphrasing everybody in equal emphasis. And that's hard because some comments are gonna speak to me more than others, but I'm trying to be neutral as possible. And again, the goal is this sort of group discussion, not one reigning idea. So it's important for me to keep in mind. So thanks.
My sister-in-law is a mediator, and she was saying that sometimes she knows when she's done a good job when people who she absolutely doesn't agree with their viewpoint think that she agrees with them because all she's done is restate what they've said,
right.
And they feel heard.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. So that's kind of feel like what you do. Like I feel like you hear us, whether you like what we say or not. It doesn't matter. You go into a different place, and it's just you're noticing this.
Right. So think about how important is that? You know, so I think everyone's having this experience of being on too many Zoom calls where people are just speaking up as loud as they can so that the machine or whether the software picks up their voice, somebody else's, you know, and we're sort of like talking on top of each other. I just find the whole experience exhausting. And isn't it nice when we could allow for a little bit more of a spacing where we don't have to fill every void with someone's voice and opinion.
Yeah.
Anyway, my own personal thing.
It's a good opinion.
I agree.
Anything else that we want to share? I really love you guys shared. You know, I had some ideas about the picture, and then you guys took it in multiple directions, which I thought were fascinating. Yeah.
I appreciated the sort of the moments of.
Hello.
Diana froze. Wait, come back.
Maybe she's saying that we should have a moment of calm and quiet.
Wait, come back, Diana.
Oh no.
She's not coming back. I don't know if she can hear. That's the thing that's weird about when you, oh, Diana, we lost you for a moment.
Oh, am I back? Okay.
You're back.
Am I back?
That's just me. I lose control of the PowerPoint. Anyway, I'll just go through these. Diana, if you can share what you were sharing, that'd be awesome.
Oh, I just appreciated that there was a moment to look and breathe and sort of, I don't know if it was a purposeful silence, but to your point, without having all these voices. And I also appreciated that as a facilitator, you didn't say, okay, Diana, I'm going to call on you next. So be ready for your comment.
That's good. Good reminder. Sometimes I will, so if I'm working with students and I start to get a sense of them and I notice that some don't want to speak up or are a little bit reluctant, I'll give them a little nudge, but always, you know, let them off the hook. And what I found is, especially with children, they, you know, you end up in this role where this kid is known as the one who always speaks up. This child is the one with all the right answers. This one's good in math. This one's good in math, you know? And sometimes when I call in the child who's a little bit more quiet, they shine. And so I always, you know, leave them the opportunity to not participate, you know, but it's interesting. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I'm trying not to put people on the spot. And then, let's see. I wanted to share that next week, we'll be working with Amy and Lonnie. So I put this slide together, part two. Juggling work and toddlers at home.
It continues. Yeah, a month later. Here.
And I have a plug for this. This is where we are today. So I was explaining to Perry and Diana that we've been focused on Giving Tuesday. We've been on the phone making calls to people, some that we know, some that we don't know, and seeing if we can, you know, connect and raise some funds. And so it's been an interesting day because it's not the easiest thing to do to pick up the phone and ask people for donations of money, clearly. Yeah. But anyway, I just wanted to share that. And oops, I wanted to thank you all. I think we'll end a little bit early. I think that's good. Maybe we can spend, you know, if you don't have anything till 4, you have like 7 minutes to just go do something, get some cold water. But thank you. It was, you know, my pleasure, my honor to be able to lead a discussion about beautiful works of art and hear other people's opinions. And everything that you said, it's all a reminder to me too, as a facilitator, to stop, to listen. You know, it's not just for the group, it's really for me too. So I really appreciate the time. Yeah.
Thank you, Tomoko.
Yeah.
So have a great rest of the day. And we'll see you hopefully next Tuesday for Amy and Lonnie.